Snowflakes and Secrets. Chapter 1. Monroe Hayes stared at the eviction notice taped to her office door. 30 days. She had 30 days to come up with 3 months' back rent, or Hayes Investigations would be out on the street. She unlocked the door and went inside, tossing the notice on her desk next to the stack of unpaid bills. The Riverside case had destroyed her reputation. 6 months of investigation, thousands of dollars spent, and she'd been wrong about everything. The husband she'd sworn was guilty turned out to have an airtight alibi. The wife who hired her sued for negligence. Now nobody would touch her. 3 potential clients this month, all of them cancelling after Googling her name. Her phone rang at 6 a.m. on December 16th. Monroe grabbed it from the nightstand, squinting at the screen. Unknown number. Hayes Investigations, Monroe answered, trying to sound professional despite being half asleep. Ms. Hayes, my name is Preston Carmichael. The voice was steady, controlled. I need to hire an investigator. Are you available to meet this morning? Monroe pushed herself up against the headboard. Carmichael. She'd seen that name in the news all week. Victoria Carmichael, murdered in her home. The story had been on every local channel. Yes, Monroe said. What time? 9 o'clock. I'll text you the address. He hung up before she could ask anything else. Monroe sat in bed with the phone in her hand. A client with money could save her business, could make the landlord stop leaving messages, could get her name attached to something other than the Riverside disaster. Or it could be another rich person who expected miracles she couldn't deliver. She got up and started the coffee maker. The Carmichael house sat behind iron gates in the kind of neighborhood where the driveways were longer than most streets. Monroe pressed the intercom button at 8:55. Hayes Investigations for Mr. Carmichael, she said. The gates swung open without a response. The driveway curved through trees that had been planted to look natural, but were spaced too evenly. The house was brick and stone, 3 stories, with more windows than Monroe could count. She parked next to a Mercedes and checked her reflection in the rearview mirror. Her blazer had a coffee stain near the hem. Nothing she could do about it now. Preston Carmichael answered the door himself. He was younger than she expected, maybe 40, wearing a suit like he'd already been to the office and back. His eyes were red but dry. Miss Hayes. He shook her hand. Thank you for coming. The entryway had marble floors that echoed when she walked. Preston led her through a hallway lined with photographs. Victoria Carmichael appeared in most of them, tall, blonde, laughing in some, serious in others. The most recent one showed her cutting a ribbon at some kind of factory opening. My office is this way, Preston said. The office had floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and a desk the size of Monroe's kitchen table. Preston gestured to a leather chair across from the desk and sat down. He pulled a business card from his jacket and slid it across to her. Monroe took it. I'm very sorry about your wife. Thank you, Preston said. I assume you've seen the news coverage. I have, Monroe said. The reports said it was a break-in. That's what the police think. Preston folded his hands on the desk. I don't agree. Monroe pulled out her notebook. Why not? Before we get into that, I need to know if you're willing to take this case, Preston said. I've done my research on you, Miss Hayes. I know about the Riverside situation. Monroe's stomach tightened. Then you know I'm probably not your best option. I know you worked that case for 6 months. You didn't quit when it got difficult. Preston leaned forward. That's what I need. The police have already decided what happened. I need someone who'll keep looking. Looking for what? Monroe asked. Preston stood and walked to the window. The police think my wife was killed by a stranger. Someone who broke in to steal jewelry and didn't expect anyone to be home. He turned back to face her. I think she was murdered by someone she knew. Someone with a reason. Do you have a suspect? Monroe asked. Yes, Preston said. Bruce Dennison. He was Victoria's VP of Operations until 4 months ago. She fired him, said he was embezzling from the company, over $200,000. Monroe wrote the name down. Did he threaten her? Multiple times, in front of witnesses. Preston walked back to the desk but didn't sit. He told her she'd regret what she'd done, that she'd ruined his career and his life. "What did the police say when you told them this?" Monroe asked. "They interviewed him. He claims he was at a bar in Westfield the night Victoria died. The bartender confirmed it. They're not pursuing it further." Preston's hands tightened into fists. "I think he paid someone to break in while he was somewhere public, made it look random." Monroe studied him. His face showed nothing but anger, controlled and cold. "That's a serious accusation. Do you have any evidence?" "Not yet," Preston said. "That's why I called you." "Mr. Carmichael, if the police already investigated this man and cleared him, I need to be clear about what I can and can't do." Monroe set her pen down. "I can look into his alibi. I can interview people who knew your wife. But if there's no evidence connecting him to this, I won't manufacture any, and I won't lie in a report to tell you what you want to hear." "I'm not asking you to lie," Preston said. "I'm asking you to look harder than the police did." They talked to Bruce for an hour and moved on. "I want someone who'll dig into his finances, his associates, his phone records if possible, someone who won't stop at the easy answer." Monroe thought about the eviction notice sitting on her desk, about the bills she couldn't pay, about how badly she needed this job. "What's your budget?" $10,000 to start. 5 now. 5 when you give me your first update next week. If this goes longer, we'll negotiate a new agreement." Preston pulled a checkbook from his desk drawer. "Is that acceptable?" $5,000 would cover her rent for 3 months, would give her time to rebuild her client list, would keep her business alive. "I'll need everything you have on Bruce Dennison," Monroe said. "Employment records, evidence of the embezzlement, names of the witnesses who heard him threaten your wife. And I'll need to talk to people who knew her, friends, family, other employees." Preston wrote the check. "My assistant will send you the files this afternoon. Victoria's sister lives in town, Rachel Harding. She'll talk to you if I ask her to." "What about you?" Monroe asked. "Where were you the night your wife died?" Preston looked up from the checkbook. "Country club. I have witnesses. The police verified all of it." "I still need to see those records," Monroe said. Preston slid the check across the desk. "I'll include them in the files." Monroe took the check and folded it into her notebook. "I'll start with Dennison's alibi. If there are inconsistencies, I'll find them." "That's all I'm asking," Preston said. He walked her back to the door. Monroe stepped outside, and the cold air hit her face. Snow was supposed to start tonight, the first real storm of December. She sat in her car and looked at the check. $5,000 for investigating a man the police had already cleared, a grieving husband who wanted someone to blame, or wanted justice, or maybe both. Monroe started the car and pulled out of the driveway. The gates closed behind her with a loud clang. Chapter 2. Harrison Drake had been sober for 18 months. 18 months since his divorce, since losing custody of his daughter, since hitting rock bottom hard enough to finally crawl back up. His practice was barely surviving. Most of his old clients had left during the dark months. The new ones were bottom feeders, insurance fraud and cheating spouses. Nothing that would rebuild his reputation or pay for the court-ordered therapy. He was picking up empty Chinese takeout containers from his desk when his phone rang. Unknown number. "Drake Investigations," Harrison answered. "Mr. Drake, my name is Gail Morrison." The woman's voice was tight, strained. "I need to hire an investigator. Can you meet with me today?" Harrison grabbed a trash bag and swept the containers into it. "What's this regarding?" "My friend was murdered last week. Victoria Carmichael. I'd rather discuss the details in person." Harrison stopped. He'd seen the news coverage. Rich woman killed in her home. Police calling it a robbery. "When can you come in?" Harrison asked. "I'm in the area now." "Would 30 minutes work?" Harrison looked around his office. Dirty clothes piled on the couch. Empty coffee cups on the filing cabinet. A stack of pizza boxes by the door he'd been meaning to take out for 3 days. "That works," Harrison said. "Thank you." Gail's voice cracked. Harrison shoved the clothes into a duffel bag and stuffed it in the closet. threw away the pizza boxes and coffee cups, wiped down his desk with paper towels, opened a window to air out the smell of old food. 20 minutes later, someone knocked. Gail Morrison was early 30s, blonde, wearing a black dress and pearls. Her eyes were red and swollen. "Miss Morrison." Harrison shook her hand. "Come in." She sat in the chair across from his desk and set her purse on her lap. Her hands were shaking. "Thank you for agreeing to meet me on such short notice," Gail said. "You mentioned your friend was murdered," Harrison said. "Victoria Carmichael," Gail nodded. "Victoria and I were roommates in college, best friends for 15 years. I talked to her at least once a week." She pulled a tissue from her purse and pressed it against her eyes. "The police think someone broke into her house to rob her." "They're wrong." Harrison pulled out his notebook. "Why do you think they're wrong?" "Because Victoria had an enemy. Someone who wanted to hurt her." Gail twisted the tissue in her hands. "His name is Bruce Dennison. He worked as her controller for 5 years. She fired him 4 months ago for embezzling from the company." "How much did he take?" Harrison asked. "Around $200,000. Victoria discovered it during an audit. She confronted him, and he denied everything at first, but the evidence was clear." Gail's voice got louder. "She fired him and reported it to the police. He didn't take it well." "What did he do?" Harrison asked. "He called her constantly. Showed up at her office building, left messages saying she'd ruined his life, that she'd regret what she'd done." Gail leaned forward. Victoria was terrified. She changed her locks, installed a security system, but she was trying to act like it didn't bother her. Harrison wrote that down. "Did she report the harassment?" "Yes. The police said they'd look into it, but they didn't do anything. Said his messages weren't specific enough to be considered real threats," Gail said. "Now she's dead, and they're calling it a random robbery." "What makes you think it wasn't?" Harrison asked. "Because nothing was stolen except some jewelry." Her laptop was still there, her purse with $200 cash in it, her car keys. Gail shook her head. "If someone broke in to rob her, why wouldn't they take those things?" Harrison had to admit that was a good question. "What did the police say when you told them about Bruce?" "They interviewed him. He claims he was with his girlfriend the night Victoria died. The girlfriend confirmed it. They're not investigating him anymore." Gail's voice rose again. "But the girlfriend is new. They only started dating 4 months ago, right after Victoria fired him. Doesn't that seem convenient?" "It's suspicious timing," Harrison agreed. "Do you know the girlfriend's name?" "Andrea something. I don't know her last name." Gail opened her purse and pulled out a checkbook. "I'll pay whatever you charge. I just need someone to prove Bruce did this. The police have given up, but I haven't." Harrison watched her write the check. Her hand was shaking. "Miss Morrison, I need to be clear about something. I can investigate Bruce Dennison. I can look into his alibi and talk to people who knew your friend. But if there's no evidence connecting him to this, I won't tell you he's guilty just because that's what you want to hear." "I don't want you to make anything up," Gail said. "I want you to find the truth." "But I already know what the truth is. Bruce killed her. He just needs to be caught." She slid the check across the desk. $5,000. Harrison picked it up. $5,000 would cover his rent for 2 months, would keep his practice alive long enough to find more work. "I'll need everything you know about Bruce Dennison," Harrison said. "Where he works now, where he lives, the name of his girlfriend if you can find it. And I'll need to talk to other people who knew Victoria, family, co-workers, anyone who might have information. Victoria's husband is Preston Carmichael. He'll talk to you if I ask him to. And her assistant, Kelly Brennan, they were very close." Gail stood and picked up her purse. "When can you start?" "Today," Harrison said. "I'll call you tomorrow with an update." After Gail left, Harrison sat at his desk and looked at the check. A client who was convinced she already knew who the killer was. A suspect with an alibi the police had verified. and a case that could either rebuild his reputation or destroy what little was left of it. He folded the check and put it in his wallet. Then he opened his laptop and started searching for information on Bruce Dennison. Chapter 3. Monroe drove to the police station after leaving Preston. She needed to see the crime scene, talk to the detectives, get a sense of what she was walking into. Detective Jason Wu looked up when she entered. They'd worked together before the Riverside disaster. He'd been one of the few who still returned her calls. "Monroe Hayes," Jason greeted. His smile was cautious. "What brings you here?" "The Carmichael murder. Preston hired me to investigate Bruce Dennison," Monroe stated. Jason's smile faded. "Preston thinks Bruce did it?" "He wants me to prove it," Monroe said. "Can I see the scene?" Jason was silent for a long moment. Monroe could see him weighing whether to trust her after the Riverside case. "Preston gave you permission to access the house?" Jason verified. "He did," Monroe confirmed. "Fine. But Monroe," Jason's voice dropped, "be careful on this one. Don't make assumptions. Bruce Dennison's alibi is solid. We checked it thoroughly." The warning stung, but it was fair. "Tell me about it." He was home with his girlfriend, Andrea Fillmore, from 6 p.m. until midnight. She's given a detailed statement, described what they watched on TV, what they ate, multiple phone calls she made to friends while Bruce was there, Jason explained. "We've verified the phone calls. The timeline checks out." "Could she be lying?" Monroe asked. "Could be, but we have no evidence of that," Jason replied. "Look, Bruce Dennison is an angry ex-employee who made threats. I get why Preston suspects him, but we need actual evidence, not just motive." Monroe nodded. "Can I talk to Andrea?" "Be my guest," Jason agreed. "But you didn't hear this from me. She seems genuinely scared of Bruce, like maybe he's not the stable, wronged employee he's pretending to be." The Carmichael house looked different in daylight. Crime scene tape crossed the back door. Jason led Monroe upstairs to the master bedroom. Blood stained the carpet near the bed. 2 dark pools that had soaked deep. Monroe forced herself to look past the violence to the details. She was shot twice, Jason indicated, both close range, time of death between 8 and 9 p.m. Monroe walked to the broken window. Glass had shattered, pieces on the floor and the patio outside. She studied the pattern carefully. "Point of entry?" Monroe asked. "We think so. Intruder climbed through. Victoria surprised them. They panicked and shot," Jason explained. Monroe examined the window frame. "Any prints?" "Partial." "Nothing in the system," Jason replied. The jewelry box was ransacked. Cash taken from her purse, but they left the safe untouched, plus several thousand in a desk drawer. "Doesn't sound very professional," Monroe observed. "No. Sounds like someone panicked. Got what they could quickly and ran," Jason agreed. "That fits with Victoria surprising them." Monroe followed Jason downstairs and into the backyard. Crime scene tape marked off a section of the snow-covered lawn. "What's that?" Monroe asked, pointing to the evidence markers. "That's where we found a pair of leather gloves." "Found them about 15 feet from the back door," Jason explained. "Generic brand, no identifying marks. We're testing for DNA, but the weather's not helping. Been exposed to snow and moisture." "Size?" she asked. "Large. Men's." Jason checked his notes. "No prints on the interior." "Cheap? Could have been picked up at any department store." "So the killer dropped them fleeing the scene," Monroe reasoned. "Looks that way," Jason agreed. "If we can match them to someone, we've got physical evidence placing them here." Monroe took out her phone and snapped photos of everything. Took notes, built a mental picture. "Forced entry," Jason said, gesturing toward the back door. "Someone pried this door open. Not sophisticated, but effective." Monroe's thoughts raced. A break-in through the back door, and a broken window upstairs. Maybe the killer heard Victoria coming and tried to create an escape route, or broke it to make noise seem like it came from outside. Victoria may have been killed when she discovered the intruder. Just a quick grab of valuables and escape. It could be a robbery gone wrong, like the police thought. Or it could have been staged to look that way. "Who benefits from Victoria's death?" Monroe asked. Preston inherits everything but the company. House, car, about $5 million in assets, Jason listed. That seems low, Monroe said, considering how successful the business is. She had a lot of debt, joint debt, which he also inherited. Jason explained. Where was he when she was killed? He was at his country club from 6 until 11. Security footage, witness statements, everything checks out perfectly, Jason answered. Didn't she have a business partner? Monroe prompted. Deborah Walsh. They had a good working relationship. No major conflicts. She's getting 20% of the company per Victoria's will, but she already owned 20% as partner. Not much motive, Jason noted. What about her ex-husband? Monroe tried. I remember their very public divorce a few years back. Jean Hartley. She eloped with Preston just weeks later. Jean was bitter about the divorce settlement, but his alibi is airtight. At a club with his new girlfriend on camera all night, Jason replied. Monroe filed it all away. Everyone seemed to have alibis, which meant the alibis were lies. Someone had hired a killer, or it was a robbery after all. What about Bruce's finances? Could he afford to hire someone? Monroe questioned. He's broke. Lost his house last month. Living in a cheap apartment, Jason stated. Doesn't seem like he could afford a hitman. But Monroe knew that anger could make people desperate, and desperate people found ways. Chapter 4. That afternoon, she tracked down Andrea Fillmore at her apartment. Andrea was nervous, fidgeting with her phone while they talked. I already told the police everything, Andrea stated. I know. I'm working for Preston Carmichael. He just wants to make sure all the details are clear, Monroe explained gently. Andrea sighed. Bruce was with me all night. We ordered Chinese food, watched movies, went to bed around midnight. What movies? Monroe asked. Some action thing on Netflix. I don't remember the name, Andrea replied. She looked away. Look, I know what this looks like. Bruce's ex-boss gets killed and he's conveniently with me. But it's the truth. How long have you been dating? Monroe questioned. 4 months. We met at a bar after he lost his job, Andrea admitted. He was really angry at first. Talked about Victoria Carmichael constantly. How she'd ruined his life. How she'd pay for it. Monroe's attention sharpened. He threatened her? He said a lot of things when he was drunk, Andrea hedged. But he didn't mean it. Bruce isn't violent. Has he ever been violent with you? Monroe pressed carefully. Andrea's face fell. I need you to leave. Andrea, if you're scared, I'm not. I have an appointment, that's all. Bruce was with me. Andrea stood up, crossing her arms. Please go. I don't want to be late. Monroe left, but she was more convinced than ever that something was wrong with Bruce's alibi. Andrea was scared. Whether that fear was of Bruce or of something else, Monroe needed to find out. Harrison spent the afternoon researching Bruce Dennison. His finances were a disaster. Eviction notices, maxed credit cards, bank account overdrawn. His employment history before Carmichael Industries was spotty, several jobs ending badly. He'd tracked down a former co-worker, Melissa Grant, who'd worked with Bruce at his previous company. Bruce was smart but had a temper, Melissa recalled over the phone. He got fired for threatening our boss after a disagreement over a project. Said some really scary things. Like what? Harrison questioned. That accidents happen. That people who crossed him regretted it, Melissa recounted. Everyone was relieved when he left. Harrison thanked her and hung up. A pattern of threats, of anger, of not handling workplace conflicts well. It built a picture of someone capable of murder. Next, Harrison drove to Carmichael Industries. The building was downtown, glass and steel, decorated with a massive wreath. The receptionist directed him to Kelly Brennan's office. Kelly was in her late 20s, her red hair in a ponytail, eyes swollen from crying. I'm investigating Victoria's death, Harrison explained gently. I know this is difficult, but I need to ask some questions. Kelly nodded, grabbing a tissue. I still can't believe she's gone." "Did Victoria seem worried about Bruce Dennison after she fired him?" Harrison asked. "Terrified," Kelly stated immediately. "He called constantly. Showed up outside the building. Security had to escort him off the property twice." "Did she think he might hurt her?" Harrison pressed. "Yes. She was making plans to work from home more, changing her routine," Kelly revealed. "She said Bruce knew too much about her schedule, her security system, that he'd had access to everything when he worked here." "That was interesting." "Did Bruce have keys to her house?" "No, but he knew the alarm code." "Victoria was going to change it but kept putting it off, Kelly explained. "She said she had too much else to deal with." "What else was she dealing with?" Harrison questioned. "The embezzlement investigation, the police involvement, business stress," Kelly listed. "Plus her marriage was rocky. She and Preston had been fighting more." Harrison made a note. "Fighting about what?" "I don't know. She didn't confide in me about personal stuff," Kelly admitted. "But I heard them arguing on the phone sometimes. About money, I think." After finishing with Kelly, Harrison sat in his car, reviewing his notes. Bruce had detailed knowledge of Victoria's security. He'd threatened previous bosses. His alibi came from a scared girlfriend. The evidence was circumstantial, but it was building. That evening, Monroe got a phone call. Unknown number. She answered cautiously. "Miss Hayes?" A voice she didn't recognize. Male. Stressed. "This is Bruce Dennison. You need to stop investigating me." Monroe's pulse quickened. "Mr. Dennison, I'm just trying to find the truth." "The truth is, I'm being framed," Bruce interrupted. His voice was desperate, angry. "Preston Carmichael wants to pin this on me. He's using you to do it. Can't you see that?" "Why would Preston frame you?" Monroe asked, keeping her voice calm. The death was already ruled a robbery, a random act of violence. If he's guilty, why hire an investigator? "How should I know?" Bruce shouted. "If you ask me, he killed his wife and he needs a scapegoat. I'm convenient. I'm the angry ex-employee. I made threats, but I didn't kill anyone." "Then help me understand," Monroe urged. "Tell me what really happened." "I was with my girlfriend. All night." "That's the truth," Bruce stated. "But nobody believes it because Andrea's scared and because I look guilty. Preston's counting on that." "Scared of what?" Monroe pressed. "Scared of me, I guess." "I haven't been handling things well," Bruce admitted. "I was angry. I said things I shouldn't have. But saying stupid things when you're drunk isn't evidence of murder." "Mr. Dennison, if you have evidence that Preston—" "I don't have evidence. That's the problem," Bruce cut in. "All I know is I didn't do this. And if you keep investigating me, you're helping the real killer get away with it. Leave me alone and tell Harrison Drake to stop calling me." The line went dead. Monroe sat in her car, the phone still in her hand. Bruce sounded genuine, desperate and scared, but genuine. Either he was innocent and being framed, or he was a very good actor. And who was Harrison Drake? She did an internet search and found his business page. She was shocked. Was another investigator looking into Victoria's death? She dialed. "Is this Harrison Drake?" she asked when he answered. "Yes," Harrison confirmed. "This is Monroe Hayes. I'm investigating Victoria Carmichael's murder. I think we should talk," she said. Chapter 5. They met at a diner the next morning. Monroe slid into the booth across from Harrison, immediately sizing him up. Mid-30s, tired eyes, cheap suit. Not the successful investigator she'd expected. "Monroe Hayes," she introduced, extending her hand. He sized her up. Baggy dress, probably borrowed or a hand-me-down messy hair, residue of dry shampoo at the roots, bags under the eyes. Not the successful investigator he'd expected. "Do you have identification?" he asked. Monroe blinked. "What?" "ID license, business card, something that proves you're actually a private investigator," Harrison said. Monroe pulled her wallet from her purse and slid her license across the table. Harrison picked it up, studied it, then pulled out his phone. He typed something, scrolled, typed again. "What are you doing?" Monroe asked. "Background check," Harrison said, gesturing toward the server. "Good morning, I'm Alex," a young man greeted. "What can I get for you this morning?" "Coffee, lots of sugar," Harrison replied. "Got any specials?" "We have 2 and 2 for $2, Alex answered. 2 eggs and 2 pieces of toast for $2. It's the early morning special. Ends at 6 o'clock. "I'll have that," Harrison said. "And for you?" Alex looked at Monroe. "Can I have that with egg whites and wheat toast?" she asked. "Shouldn't be a problem," Alex answered. It struck her that he had way too much energy for so early in the morning. "Thanks. And coffee black." Alex took their menus and walked away. Harrison picked up his phone and continued his scrolling. "You worked the Riverside case. Wife hired you to prove her husband was cheating. You testified he was guilty. Turns out he had an alibi. She sued you for negligence." Monroe's face went hot. "Yeah, that's public record." "Lost most of your clients after that, I suspect," Harrison continued, still reading. "You done?" Monroe asked. Harrison pocketed his phone and handed back a license. "Just making sure you're who you say you are. Can't be too careful these days." "Bruce Dennison called me last night. He said to tell you to leave him alone," Monroe said. "I'm afraid I can't do that. I need to investigate him," Harrison confirmed. "I could be persuaded to tell you what he shared with me," Monroe offered. "Work together?" Alex brought their coffee. He added sugar, stirred. "Look, I appreciate you reaching out," Harrison said, "but I work alone." "Always have." Monroe nodded. "I get it. I usually work alone too." "Then we're on the same page," Harrison said. "Something about this case isn't adding up." She took a sip of her coffee. "Preston hired me to prove Bruce did it, but he was already cleared. The police had already determined it to be a robbery gone wrong," Monroe explained. "Why doubt their findings?" "Listen, I'm not looking for a partner, but I might be willing to share some information if you do the same. Maybe we each have a piece the other needs," he suggested. "All right," she said. "You go first." Alex arrived with 2 plates. "Cook said no special requests on the deal, sorry," he said, putting the dishes in front of them. She forced a smile. "Thanks," she replied as he turned and walked away. "Eggs are good for you." Harrison took a bite of his. "My great-grandfather ate bacon and eggs every day for breakfast, yolks and all. Lived to be 99. "Good for him," she sighed, picking up her mug. Harrison scrolled through his phone and began to read. Bruce has a history of workplace threats. His alibi is a scared girlfriend. He knew Victoria's security system. Multiple people say he was obsessed with revenge after being fired. "You thought she looked scared too?" Monroe asked. "I got that vibe too, but there's no direct evidence pointing to him." "True. But it builds a picture," Harrison replied. "I went to the crime scene. The break-in was forced but not sophisticated. Someone pried open the back door but also broke the bedroom window. It seems strange. Maybe they panicked when they heard Victoria coming," Monroe recounted. "Killed her to eliminate the witness. Quick grab of valuables and escape. Could be robbery gone wrong. Could be staged." "Was the window broken from the inside or outside?" "I took pictures," Monroe remembered. She pulled out her phone and scrolled. "Here," she turned it toward him. "Broken from the inside. So, the killer could have come in through the door and escaped out the window." "Why not go out the way he came in?" Harrison thought out loud. "Unless he couldn't get back downstairs and had to make a quick escape." "It's possible," Monroe replied. They looked at each other across the table. "When Preston hired me, he specifically told me to investigate Bruce," Monroe revealed. "Handed me the case with Bruce already as the primary suspect." "I was hired by Victoria's best friend, Gail." "She did the same," Harrison confirmed. "Both our clients want Bruce convicted." "What if they're right?" Monroe suggested. "What if Bruce did it?" Preston seemed so sure. Harrison considered it. "Who are the other suspects?" They both thought for a moment. "There's Preston," Harrison said. "Preston?" Why hire an investigator if he'd already been cleared? That seems like a risk, she scoffed. I've been in this business a long time, Harrison said. People do strange things. Well, if Preston is a suspect, then so is Gail, she pointed out. Gail? Harrison raised an eyebrow. How do you figure? Well, where was she the night of the murder? What's her alibi, she asked. I don't know, he admitted. You've been doing this a long time and you didn't think to get her alibi, Monroe teased. I'll tell you what, Harrison challenged. You interview Gail, get her alibi, and I'll go talk to Preston. Actually, that's not a half bad idea, Monroe smiled. Maybe you're not as terrible at this as you seem. Chapter 6. Harrison spent the afternoon at the county records office pulling financial documents. Preston's business accounts, tax returns, property records. Everything seemed legitimate on the surface. Then he found something interesting. A series of wire transfers from Preston's personal account to an offshore holding company. $20,000 monthly for the past year. The company name meant nothing to him, but the pattern was suspicious. He photographed the records and texted Monroe. Found something. Preston sending money offshore. Regular payments. Her response came quickly. Interesting. Meeting with Kelly's former roommate. Call you soon. Harrison drove to Preston's country club next. The manager was cooperative. Mr. Carmichael was here from 6 until 11. I saw him myself multiple times. Did he leave at all? The detective pressed. Not that I saw. He was in the bar most of the evening, then had dinner in the restaurant, the manager replied. But you couldn't have had eyes on him every minute, Harrison suggested. The manager hesitated. Well, no, but his car was in the lot all night. Security footage shows him arriving a couple of minutes past 6 and leaving at 11:12. Harrison thanked him and reviewed the security footage himself. Preston's car arriving, Preston getting out, walking inside, the car sitting in the lot all evening, Preston returning, driving away. It looked airtight. Preston had been seen by multiple witnesses throughout the evening. Unless he could be in 2 places at once, he didn't kill Victoria himself. But he could have hired someone to do it. He made notes and headed to his next stop. Meanwhile, Monroe met with Emma Rodriguez, Kelly's former roommate. They'd lived together for 2 years before Kelly moved out 6 months ago. Kelly was always so organized, so together, Emma recalled. But about 8 months ago, she changed, started being secretive, taking calls in private. Do you know who she was talking to? Monroe asked. No, but she suddenly had money, Emma revealed. Started wearing expensive clothes, eating at nice restaurants. I asked if she got a raise and she got defensive. Monroe's curiosity was piqued. Did she say where the money came from? She said she was helping a friend with something. A business consulting thing, but she didn't give details, Emma stated. I thought maybe she was dating someone rich, but she never brought anyone around. After leaving Emma, Monroe called a contact at the phone company. It took some persuading and a promise to have dinner, but she got a list of Kelly's most frequent contacts over the past 8 months. One number appeared repeatedly, sometimes multiple times per day. Monroe ran the number through a reverse lookup. It came back registered to Preston Carmichael. She immediately called Harrison. Kelly and Preston have been in constant contact for 8 months. Multiple calls daily, she said. Preston's been paying someone offshore $20,000 a month for a year, Harrison replied. What if that someone is Kelly? An affair, Monroe suggested. Maybe, Harrison countered. Hear me out. Preston and Kelly plan Victoria's murder. They hire someone to pull the trigger. Preston establishes an alibi while the hired killer does the job. It's a start, Monroe said. I'm heading to Gail's right now. Gail lived in a townhouse in the North End, brick with white shutters. Monroe rang the bell at 2 in the afternoon. Gail answered wearing yoga pants and an oversized sweater. Miss Morrison? I'm Monroe Hayes. Preston hired me to investigate Victoria's case, she introduced herself. Do you have a few minutes to talk? Gail hesitated, then opened the door wider. Of course. Come in. The living room was neat but cluttered. Throw pillows arranged on the couch, framed photos covering every surface, and 2 glasses on the table. Monroe noticed several pictures of Gail and Victoria together. College photos, vacation shots, recent ones at restaurants. "Can I get you something to drink?" Gail offered. "Coffee? Water?" "Water would be great," Monroe said. Gail picked up the 2 glasses from the coffee table and disappeared into the kitchen. Monroe heard cabinets opening, ice clinking into a glass. She studied the photos more closely. In one recent picture, Victoria and Gail were laughing at what looked like a wine bar. Victoria's arm was around Gail's shoulders. Gail returned with 2 bottles of water and handed one to Monroe. They sat down, Gail on the couch, Monroe in the armchair. "Can you tell me what you know about Bruce Dennison?" Monroe began. Gail fiddled with the water bottle. Victoria was terrified of him. After she fired him, he wouldn't leave her alone. He called constantly, showed up at her work, sent her threatening emails. "Did you see any of these emails?" Monroe asked. "Victoria showed me a few. They were awful. He blamed her for ruining his life, said she'd pay for what she did, and threatened to sue her for wrongful dismissal." Gail's voice got louder. "He was crazy." She said if anything happened to her, it was him. "When was the last time you saw Victoria?" Monroe asked. Gail looked at the ceiling, thinking. 2 days before she died. We had lunch at a sandwich place downtown. "How did she seem?" Monroe asked. "Stressed. She was dealing with the embezzlement investigation, the restraining order against Bruce, problems at work." Gail revealed. Monroe noticed Gail's hand shook as she set the water bottle down. "Did Victoria ever mention problems with her husband?" Monroe pressed. "Preston?" Gail's eyes widened. "No, never. Preston loved her. He was devastated when she died." Monroe watched Gail's face. She looked angry, defensive. "Where were you the night Victoria died?" Gail blinked. "What?" "Just routine." "I have to ask everyone," Monroe explained. "I was home, alone." Gail crossed her arms. "I watched TV, went to bed early. I didn't know anything had happened until Preston called me the next morning." "What did Preston say when he called?" Monroe asked. Gail's eyes filled with tears. "He said Victoria was dead, that someone had broken into the house and killed her. I couldn't believe it. I kept thinking it had to be a mistake." "Did he mention Bruce?" Monroe pressed. "Not at first. But when I talked to him later that day, he told me that the police were investigating it as a robbery, but he thought Bruce was involved." Gail grabbed a tissue from the box on the side table. "Did Victoria ever tell you that Bruce knew her security code?" the investigator asked. "Yes. He'd had access to everything when he worked at the company. Victoria kept meaning to change it, but she was so busy." Gail wiped her eyes. If she'd just changed that stupid code, maybe she'd still be alive. "Do you know if Bruce has any friends who might help him?" she inquired. "Anyone he could have hired?" "I don't know. Victoria didn't talk about Bruce's personal life. She just wanted him out of hers." Gail stood and walked to the window. "I should have done more. I should have convinced her to take the threats more seriously. Maybe hire security or move somewhere safe until Bruce was prosecuted." Monroe watched Gail stare out the window. Her shoulders were rigid, her hands clenched at her sides. "Miss Morrison? Do you know Kelly Brennan?" Monroe asked. "Victoria's assistant?" Gail turned around. "I've met her a few times. Why?" "Kelly mentioned Victoria and Preston were fighting about money." "Do you know anything about that?" Monroe questioned. "No. Victoria didn't discuss finances with me," Gail said quickly. "We talked about personal things. Work stress. Her marriage in general terms, but not specific details about money." Monroe noticed Gail wouldn't look into her eyes. "Did Victoria confide in you about everything?" "We were best friends." "Of course she did," Gail insisted. "Then she must have told you about the affair," Monroe said, watching Gail's face. Gail froze. "What affair?" "Preston's affair. If Victoria confided everything in you, she would have mentioned it, Monroe said. Preston wasn't having an affair. Victoria would have told me, Gale replied. Her face had gone pale. Monroe stood. Thank you for your time, Miss Morrison. If you think of anything else, please call me. She handed Gale a business card. Gale took it without looking at it. Find Bruce Dennison, Gale said. He killed my best friend. Make him pay for it. Monroe walked to her car and sat inside. She pulled out her notebook and wrote down everything Gale had said. The details about Bruce, the timeline, the security code. Something about Gale Morrison wasn't right. Monroe couldn't prove it yet, but she could feel it. She started the car and headed to meet Harrison. They had a lot to discuss. Chapter 7. That evening they met at Monroe's office. She spread out all the evidence on her desk. Financial records, phone logs, witness statements, crime scene photos. 3 people with 3 alibis Monroe listed. Preston at his club. Gale at home. Bruce with his girlfriend. Let's go back to basics, Harrison suggested. Who benefits from Victoria's death? Preston inherited $5 million, Monroe said. But he has the most airtight alibi, he thought out loud. Who else had something to gain from this? Well, I guess the thief, if this really was a robbery gone wrong, Monroe surmised. But so little was taken, Harrison added. Surely, a thief would have lifted the cash from her purse. They would have looked there first. Victoria's house had an alarm, he added. Why didn't it sound? According to Gale, Bruce still had the code, Monroe answered. He could have disabled it. Why pry the door open then? Harrison asked. You're right, she said. A man with the code wouldn't need to pry the door open. None of this makes sense. Harrison stood and began pacing. We are missing something. Okay, Monroe started. If it wasn't Bruce, and it wasn't a robbery, who is left? Preston, Harrison started, but his alibi is the most airtight. Monroe's phone buzzed. She looked down. I have to take this, she said as she picked it up and disappeared into the kitchen. Harrison's eyes landed on the case file. He picked it up and dropped into a chair, thumbing through it as he waited. That was Jason, my contact at the police station. Those payments for $20,000 each month. They were going to Kelly, just as you suspected. Blackmail? He asked. Could be, Monroe agreed. That is a lot of money. Harrison knitted. But for what? Monroe thought about the 2 glasses on Gale's coffee table. The way Gale had picked them both up when she'd arrived. The way Gale's face had drained of colour when Monroe mentioned an affair. Gale? Preston was having an affair with Gale, not Kelly. Victoria's best friend? Harrison stood up. That makes sense. Kelly found out and used it for leverage. She threatened to tell Victoria unless Preston paid, Monroe added. But Victoria's dead now. Why is Preston still paying? Harrison pulled out his phone and scrolled through his notes. Look at this. Kelly's phone records show constant contact with Andrea. Not just a few calls. 47 calls in the past month. Monroe looked at the screen. Why would Kelly be calling Andrea that much? And look at the locations. Harrison swiped through more data. They checked in at the same coffee shop 12 times. Same restaurant 8 times. This isn't casual. They're together, Monroe said. Kelly and Andrea are in a relationship. Harrison nodded. Andrea provided Bruce an alibi, but no one provided one for her. We know he drinks too much. What if he was drunk and passed out most of the night? We need to talk to Andrea, Monroe said. They took Harrison's car. The heater coughed and rattled but barely produced any warmth. Monroe pulled her coat tighter and watched her breath fog in the cold air. Sorry about the heat, Harrison said. I keep meaning to get it fixed, but money's been tight. I can understand that, Monroe responded. Things are only getting more expensive. Divorce wrecked me. Lost half of everything. I pay alimony, have to live in my office. Harrison turned onto the highway. After a moment, she added, I'm living in my office too. It's cheaper than an apartment. And I have everything I need. Harrison nodded. Once you're behind, it's impossible to catch up, you know. Yeah, Monroe paused. I'm divorced too, she added. Harrison glanced at her. Yeah? 3 years ago. He said I was never home, that I cared more about my cases than about him. Monroe rubbed her hands together for warmth. He wasn't wrong. That's what being a private detective does to a marriage, Harrison said. Long nights, even longer days, no sleep, you're never present enough, always thinking about the case, always one more lead to follow. And you don't have skills or education for anything else, Monroe added, so you just keep doing it. Keep missing dinners and birthdays and all the little things that add up. Until everything falls apart, Harrison finished. And then you're alone in a car with a broken heater, chasing a murder case at 10 at night because it's the only thing you know how to do. They drove in silence for a moment. Monroe watched the streetlights pass, creating regular patterns of light and shadow across the dashboard. You think we'll ever figure it out? Monroe asked. How to have a life outside of this? Probably not, Harrison said, but at least we're good at what we do. She smiled. Let's hope that's true. They pulled into the parking lot of Andrea's apartment building. Most of the windows were dark. A flickering streetlight created shifting shadows. Third floor, Monroe said. Her lights are on. They got out and walked to the entrance. They climbed the stairs to the third floor and found Andrea's apartment. Monroe knocked. Footsteps inside, then silence. Andrea, we know you're in there, Harrison called. We just want to talk. The door opened a crack. Andrea peered out, her breathing heavy. What do you want? We need to ask you about Kelly Brennan, Monroe said. Andrea's face went white. I don't have anything to say. We have phone records showing 47 calls between you and Kelly in the past month, Harrison said. We know you've been meeting regularly. We know you're more than just acquaintances. Andrea's hand tightened on the door. We're friends. Friends don't call each other that much, Monroe said. Andrea, we know about you and Kelly. We know you're together, and we think you helped her do something. Andrea's eyes filled with tears. Please leave. Where were you really the night Victoria died? Harrison asked. Were you actually home with Bruce all night? Yes, Andrea said, but her voice shook. Bruce was with me. We ordered food, watched TV, went to bed. I already told the police. But Bruce was drunk that night, wasn't he? Monroe pressed. Passed out on your couch. He wouldn't remember if you left or if someone came over. Andrea started to close the door. I need you to go. Andrea, if you're protecting Kelly, Monroe started. Andrea slammed the door. They heard the deadbolt slide into place. Monroe and Harrison looked at each other. She's terrified, Harrison said. And she's lying, Monroe added. They walked back to the car. Monroe's mind raced through the evidence. Kelly had motive and opportunity. Andrea had the connection to Bruce and the fake alibi. Together, they could have pulled it off. We need to confront them, Monroe said. All of them together. Preston, Gail, Kelly, Bruce, Andrea. Everyone in one room. Harrison started the car. When? Tomorrow afternoon. 2 p.m. That gives us time to prepare, Monroe said. How do we get them all together? Harrison asked. Monroe thought for a moment. Preston. I'll get Preston to invite everyone to his house tomorrow. Tell him I have new evidence and I need everyone there to clear things up. He won't question it. He hired me for answers. She pulled out her phone and dialed. Jason, it's Monroe. Are you busy tomorrow? Chapter 8. The next day, Monroe and Harrison arrived at Preston's house at 1. They wanted time to prepare before everyone else arrived. Preston opened the door. He looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes. Come in. The living room was large with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a snow-covered lawn. Preston had set up chairs in a semicircle facing the fireplace. Did everyone confirm they're coming? Harrison asked. Yes. Gail, Kelly, Bruce, and Andrea. They'll all be here at 2. Preston poured himself a drink from the bar cart. Can you tell me what this is about now?" "When everyone's here," Monroe said. They waited. Monroe's hands were sweating despite the cold. Harrison stood by the window, watching the driveway. At 2 p.m. exactly, a car pulled up. Gail got out, wearing jeans and a heavy coat. She walked to the door and Preston let her in. "What's going on?" Gail asked when she saw Monroe and Harrison. "Preston said you had news about Victoria's case." "Have a seat," Monroe said, gesturing to the chairs. "We're waiting for a few others." Gail's eyes narrowed. "Others?" Before Monroe could answer, another car arrived. Kelly got out and walked to the door. When she came inside and saw Gail, her face went pale. "What is this?" Kelly asked. "Sit down," Harrison said. Kelly sat slowly, as far from Gail as possible. 2 more cars arrived together, Bruce and Andrea. They walked up the driveway separately, not looking at each other. When they came inside and saw everyone else, they both stopped. "You said it would just be us," Bruce said to Preston. "Sit," Preston said. Everyone sat. The room was silent except for the ticking of a grandfather clock in the corner. Monroe stood in front of the fireplace. Harrison stood next to her. She looked at each person in turn. Gail, nervous and confused. Kelly, guarded and tense. Bruce, angry and suspicious. Andrea, terrified and small. Preston, exhausted and hollow. 6 days ago, Victoria Carmichael was murdered in her home, Monroe started. The police ruled it a robbery gone wrong, but the evidence never fit. She pulled out crime scene photos and laid them on the coffee table. Everyone leaned forward to look. "The alarm never sounded even though the door was forced open," Harrison said. "Valuable items were left behind. The window was broken from inside, not outside. This wasn't a random robbery." "Someone with inside knowledge killed Victoria," Monroe continued. "Someone who knew the security code. Someone who knew her schedule. Someone who had motive." "We've spent the past week investigating everyone connected to Victoria," Harrison said, "and we've uncovered several secrets." Monroe looked at Preston and Gail. Preston Carmichael was having an affair with Gail Morrison, Victoria's best friend. They'd been seeing each other for over a year. Gail's face went red. Bruce stared at them with disgust. "You can't prove that," Preston said. "Don't worry," Monroe smiled. "We're just getting started." "Victoria found out 2 weeks before she died," Harrison said. "She confronted Preston, told him she wanted a divorce. But there was someone else who knew about the affair," Monroe said. She turned to Kelly. Kelly Brennan, Victoria's assistant. Kelly had been helping Preston cover it up. Lying about his whereabouts, deleting emails, making excuses. Kelly crossed her arms, but she said nothing. "When Victoria found out, she told Kelly she was going to fire her for being complicit," Harrison said. "Kelly would lose her job, her income, her reputation, everything." "So Kelly started blackmailing Preston," Monroe pulled out financial records. $20,000 a month for the past year. $240,000 total. Kelly threatened to expose the affair unless Preston paid. "It's true," Preston admitted. "I was having an affair with Gail, but Victoria knew about it. It was over, and we were working on our marriage," he insisted. "Then why keep paying the blackmail?" Harrison asked. "You kept paying even after Victoria was gone." "Why?" Monroe looked at Kelly. "Because you told him you'd claim he hired you to kill Victoria. You'd tell police he paid you to do it. He couldn't prove he didn't, so he kept paying." "That's a lie," Kelly said. Her voice was shaky. "Is it?" Monroe pulled out more documents. "We have bank records showing the payments. We have text messages where you threatened Preston. We have everything." Kelly stood up. "I want to leave." "Sit down," Harrison said. "We're not done." Kelly sat, but her whole body was rigid. "Kelly wanted Victoria dead," Monroe said. "Victoria must have discovered your little blackmail scheme," Harrison added. "She was going to blow up the whole thing, and your income stream was going to go away. But you couldn't do it alone. You needed help, someone who could provide information, Someone vulnerable who could be manipulated. Monroe turned to Andrea. Andrea Fillmore, Bruce Dennison's girlfriend, but also Kelly Brennan's girlfriend. Bruce's head snapped toward Andrea. What? Kelly and Andrea have been in a relationship for 6 months, Harrison said. He pulled out phone records. 47 calls in the past month alone. Multiple meetings at coffee shops and restaurants. They weren't just friends. Andrea turned to him and started crying. I'm sorry, she managed. Kelly convinced Andrea to help her, Monroe said. Told her it was the only way they could be together. That Victoria was going to ruin everything. That's not true, Kelly said, but her voice cracked. The night Victoria died, Andrea was home with Bruce, Harrison continued. But Bruce was passed out drunk by 8 p.m. Andrea made sure of that. While Bruce was unconscious, Kelly came over. Andrea gave Kelly the security code to Victoria's house, Monroe said. Bruce had probably given it to her when he was drunk. Andrea passed that information to Kelly. She also told Kelly when Victoria would be home alone. No, Andrea sobbed. That's not what happened. Then tell us what did happen, Monroe said. Andrea looked at Kelly. Kelly shook her head. I can't, Andrea whispered. Andrea, Harrison approached her. Kelly's going to let you take the fall for this. She's going to say you did everything, that you're obsessed with her, that she barely knew you. Is that what you want? Andrea wiped her face. It's true, all of it. She came over that night. I got Bruce to give me the code, but he didn't have the key, so Kelly had to pry the door open. I gave her a pair of men's gloves I bought at the drugstore. She dropped them behind the house to make it look like a man had committed the crime. Don't listen to her, Kelly blurted. But Andrea continued. She said we'd be together. She said if I helped her, we'd have money and freedom and everything would be perfect. What else? Monroe pressed. I told her Victoria's schedule. Her voice was low. Kept Bruce drunk and unconscious so he couldn't remember anything. Made phone calls to friends to establish I was home. Andrea looked at Kelly again. Kelly's face was white. She left my apartment around 8:30, Andrea said. Went to Victoria's house. Came back around 10. She had blood on her sleeve. She washed it off in my bathroom and left before Bruce woke up. The room went silent. Everyone stared at Kelly. Kelly stood slowly. She's lying. She's crazy. She killed Victoria and now she's trying to blame me. Your phone pinged off a cell tower 3 blocks from Victoria's house at 8:45 p.m., Monroe said. We have the records. I was driving, Kelly said. To where? Harrison asked. Your apartment is in the opposite direction. Kelly's hands shook. I went to a store. Which store? Monroe asked. We pulled security footage from every store in that area. You're not on any of them. Kelly glanced at the door. Then you missed one, Kelly sneered. Go back and look again. I have proof, Andrea added. The sweater she was wearing that night. The one with Victoria's blood on it. It's in my closet at home. I was supposed to burn it, but something told me to hold on to it. I'm glad I did. Kelly's eyes flicked back to the door. She ran. She bolted for the front door, yanked it open and sprinted outside. Kelly ran down the driveway toward the street, her shoes slipping on patches of ice. A police car sat at the end of the driveway, blocking the exit. Detective Jason Wu stood there, weapon drawn. Kelly skidded to a stop. Another patrol car pulled up, and 2 uniformed officers stepped out. She was trapped. Kelly Brennan, Jason said, walking forward. You're under arrest for the murder of Victoria Carmichael. Kelly's legs gave out. She sank to the ground, her hands covering her face. Jason pulled her to her feet and cuffed her wrists behind her back. Jason led her to the police car. She didn't resist, didn't speak, just cried silently as he put her in the back seat. Another officer approached Andrea. Miss Fillmore, we need you to come to the station for questioning. Andrea nodded. She looked at Bruce. I'm sorry. After the police cars left, everyone went back inside. The living room felt colder now, emptier. Gail stood by the window. Bruce grabbed his coat and left without a word. Preston poured himself another drink. "Thank you," Preston said to Monroe, "for finding the truth. I need to call my lawyer, figure out what charges I might face for the blackmail situation." "Good luck," Monroe said. Preston nodded. He looked exhausted, older somehow than when they'd first met. Gail picked up her purse. "I should go." She walked out without looking at Preston. He watched her leave, then turned and walked deeper into the house, disappearing down a hallway. Monroe and Harrison stood in the entryway. "We should go too," Harrison said. They walked to his car. The afternoon sun was weak, barely warming the air. Monroe's hands were cold, but she felt satisfied. Tired, but satisfied. "We make a pretty great team," Harrison said as he started the car. "We do," Monroe agreed. "You're thorough. You don't give up, and you actually listen when I have an idea." "You're sharp," Harrison said. "You see things other people miss. And you're willing to take risks when it matters." She got into his car. The heater rattled and coughed. "You really need to get that fixed," Monroe said. "I will," Harrison said. "Now that I've made a little bit of money." "We solved a high-profile murder," Monroe reminded him. "That's going to bring in clients." "We'll see," Harrison said. He dropped her at her office. Monroe got out and leaned down to look through the window. "Have a good holiday," she said. "You too," Harrison nodded. She watched him drive away, then went upstairs to her office. The eviction notice was still on her desk. She picked it up, walked to the trash can and dropped it in. The case had paid enough to cover the back rent. She was safe for now. Chapter 9. Christmas morning came cold and clear. Monroe woke up late, made coffee, and was halfway through the cup when someone knocked on her office door. She wasn't expecting anyone. The office was closed for the holiday. Monroe climbed the stairs and unlocked the door. Harrison stood there holding 2 cups of coffee and a brown paper bag. "Merry Christmas," he said. "Merry Christmas," she answered. "What are you doing here?" "Brought you breakfast." Harrison held up the bag. "Figured you'd be working even on a holiday." Monroe smiled. "I actually wasn't. But come in." They sat at her desk. Harrison pulled items from the bag. 2 slices of wheat toast wrapped in foil. A banana. Monroe looked at him. "Where did you get wheat toast on Christmas morning?" Harrison grinned. "Made it myself. Toaster in my office actually works. And I grabbed the banana on my way out the door." Monroe laughed. "You made me toast." "I remembered the diner," Harrison said. "You tried to order egg whites and wheat toast. Figured this was better than nothing." "It's perfect," Monroe said. She took a slice of toast and the banana. "Thank you." "So," Harrison said after a moment, "I was thinking, maybe we could go get a proper meal together sometime, like dinner." Monroe looked up from her toast. "Like a date?" Harrison met her eyes. "If you want it to be." Monroe smiled. "I might want it to be." "Good," Harrison said. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out an envelope. "I brought you something else." Monroe took the envelope and opened it. She looked up at him, fighting back a smile. "You brought me crime scene photos?" "You shouldn't have." Harrison laughed. "The Chandler case." "Missing person." Robert Chandler's sister disappeared from a grocery store parking lot 3 months ago. No witnesses, no security footage. Car was still there, with her purse inside. Monroe flipped through the photos. "What do the police think?" "They think she ran away. New life, new identity, but the brother doesn't buy it." Harrison leaned forward. "He's paying $20,000, 10 each if we work it together." Monroe looked at him. "That's good money." "It's great money," Harrison said, "and it's a real case. The kind that could build our reputation even more." He paused. "So, what do you say, partner?" Monroe set down the pictures and looked at him. At his tired eyes and cheap suit, and the way he'd showed up on Christmas morning with toast, he'd made himself because he remembered she was a healthy eater. At the way he'd trusted her instincts throughout the Carmichael case. at the way he made her feel like she could be good at this job again. "I say yes," Monroe said, "to the case. And to dinner." Harrison smiled. "Good. There's a place downtown that does a great salmon. Opens back up tomorrow." "Salmon sounds perfect," Monroe said. They finished their breakfast and went over the Chandler file together. Outside, snow kept falling. The city was quiet and clean and full of secrets waiting to be uncovered. But for now, Monroe Hayes felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope, partnership, maybe even the beginning of something more. The end.